Hello and welcome to this video covering Milestone 1 for the MAT-243 final projects in the Codio environment. The first thing that you want to be aware of is which scenario you've been asked by an instructor to complete. There are 3 different scenarios. They are very similar. Obviously different scenarios, but the same process for each one. I'm going to review scenario A for Milestone 1. But your scenario, whether you have B or C, will be very similar. So once you log into Codio, you'll see each of your scenarios, and you can click on whichever one it is that you need to get into to start. See, it's loading here. And once that opens, you'll be able to see the steps that you need to take to complete this assignment. So the setup for Codio, we have a 2-column setup here. So over here on the left-hand side, we have our Milestone 1 script, you can see here, and on the right we have our guide. Those of you who are familiar with Codio, this is a very standard setup. For those of you who are new to it, this on the right hand side will tell you a little bit more about how to go about this process for completing this assignment, and this is the script that will be executed. If you scroll down just quickly, you'll see that there is a check it, and that will check to ensure that you've done all the steps correctly and that your output for part 1 here is correct. So we're going to go through this. You'll notice quickly you have some import statements here which you'll be using, and then you'll notice that there's a lot of code commented out. So it's important that you recognize that do these things in order and follow the directions exactly about which sections are being commented out or uncommented, and follow those explicitly. So one thing you'll notice right away is that if you run into issues and you'd like to start over, you can click on the gear button up here and select restore current files, and that'll reset it. So we can test that here. Just write test in there, and then if we click this, restore current files, it'll ask us if we're sure we want to do that. Again, that'll reset everything, so just be careful if you do that. You'll notice that what I typed in there is gone now. So if you think you can't figure out what mistakes you may have made and you want to just restart, that's a great way to do it. Alright, so let's go through this a little bit. Step 1 is going to be to import your data set. So you want to read through this this description. This scenario tells you a little bit more about it. It'll tell you about each of the variables, EMXP, EMXT. Get to know those pieces a little bit more, and then we'll get started with step 1. Step 1 is uncomment line 11, which I've actually already done, and then replace file name with manchesterweather.csv. It's important to notice the single quotes here. So under file name, so I'm going to copy everything without the single quotes and paste it right in here with the single quotes. So I still have single quotes around that. And then for replace dataset name with Manchester weather as the variable. Great, so now we're assigning whatever is read from this CSV to this Manchester weather variable. So that's step 1. Alright, step 2, we're going to calculate descriptive statistics for extreme maximum temperature, EMXT. So we're going to look at mean, median, variance, standard deviation, etc. You should be familiar with those. The first step is going to be to uncomment lines 17 through 52. So one of the things that I'm going to do here, oops, sorry about that, is I'm going to click here, and then I'm going to go to find replace, and I'm going to find anywhere where there's this symbol for that Python recognizes as a comment, which is the pound or hash symbol, and a space after it, because that's what these all seem to have. And I'm going to replace it with nothing, and I'm going to find the next one and then hit replace. And so I'm going to replace this, and I'm just going to be careful to do it only down to line 52. You could also just delete these, that's fine as well. And now I've passed line 52, so I'm going to stop and close that. And then anywhere where there's a dataset name between line 17 and 52, I'm going to replace dataset name with Manchester weather. So I'll go back up to line 17 here, and again do find replace, just like you would in Word or other software. I want to replace find dataset name, replace it with Manchester weather. I'm going to hit find, and I'm just going to replace that all the way until I hit line 52. That's much easier than typing anything in. I'll go back up and then do variable name. And again, being careful with the single quote. So I'm just going to pay attention really closely to that. EMXT. So I'm replacing variable name with EMXT in lines 17 through 52. So I'm going to find that. And you'll notice that it highlighted everything except for the single quotes, which is good. So when I replace it, you'll notice EMXT is still in single quotes, which is exactly what I want. I'll do that all the way down through line 52. And now I've completed that step. So find replaces your friend here. All right, next we're going to do the same thing, calculate descriptive statistics, but for extreme maximum precipitation. Same statistics we're calculating. And so this says in lines 56 through 89. So I'm going to start here. And again, I'm going to do a search for pound space, replace it with nothing. And start replacing those all the way through line 89. So again, this is probably faster than deleting everything. And then I'll scroll back up to the top here, find dataset name, and replace it with Manchester weather. So let's find and replace all the way through line 89. And then again, variable name. We're going to replace all of that with EMXP, extreme maximum precipitation. All right. And again, let's make sure that we started up here and that we end at line on or before line 89. There we go. Those are all the descriptive statistics. And now we can run the check it. And if we did everything correctly, we'll see a passed. That should be green. So just give it a second here. Check one passed, so we're good. Now, if we had anything wrong, let's say we forgot to uncomment this last line here, for instance. So I'll put we'll comment that. If I hit check it, I should get an error. Oh, I didn't. That's surprising. You can always be surprised. But let's comment out these last few and check it. And now it tells me that check one failed. And so I would need to go back and look and review and see where I may have gone wrong there. So, and the reason that it didn't fail when I put that first pound symbol in there is because it's set to ignore white space issues. So if you had an extra space or a new line or something like that, it wouldn't be a big issue. So, all right, so check one is passed, so we can move on with either the next or the arrow up here. Click next. Part 2 is we're going to construct confidence intervals. Excuse me. So we're going to construct a 99% confidence interval following these directions here. So the last thing we did was to check those descriptive statistics, we had to uncomment those lines. Well, now I have to comment them out. So there's a couple options here. You can go back if you're more comfortable with the pound single line notation. You can go through and do that and just add a pound symbol in front of each of these lines. If you'd prefer to do it, what might be a little bit faster is to do a multi-line comment. So that's 3 single quotes, 1, 2, 3, and you'll notice that Codio, other IDEs do this as well. They'll print the next 3. So now if I scroll down, and typically you'd want to return this to the next line like that. The reason I'm not going to do that is because then it kind of messes up which line numbers, and then you have to pay attention to that. So we're going to comment out lines 17 through 52. So we'll go to 52 and we can add the last 3 tick marks here. And now you'll notice that this whole section in here is now commented out, whereas this section is not. So now we have to do 56 through 89. So I'll do that. It's 3 tick marks. And again, if you're not comfortable with that, feel free to use the pound symbol. Works just as well. And again, typically this would go on the line below here. I'm just trying to be cognizant of the keeping these lines exact, so we don't so we can follow this these directions exactly. All right, so now starting with section, starting in line 94, it's just through line 100, so I'm just going to delete these as opposed to doing find replace. All right, so we've done that, and same thing here. I'm not going to do find replace because, you know, it's just a couple to replace. Just make sure I get all of them here. Replace data set name with Manchester weather. Okay, that's done. Replace variable name with EMXT. That's here. Make sure we keep those single quotes. All right, and then the last thing we do is replace X value with appropriate value. All right, so that's what we're going to have to actually come up here and look. And it says we're constructing a 99% confidence interval for the proportion of months with the highest monthly maximum temperatures above 19 degrees Celsius, EMXT greater than 190. So that is right here. Our EMXT value should be greater than 190. All right, so let's scroll down and see what's next. Confidence interval for population mean, a 95% confidence interval for highest monthly maximum precipitation. And in this, we're going to again uncomment these lines 106 through 113. And then we're going to replace data set name with that Manchester weather variable again. I think I see 3 instances of it. Again, if you want to use find replace, that's fine as well. Just easier for me in this instance to just copy and paste it. And then we're going to replace a variable name with EMXP. So, and I actually had this here. That probably would have been easier because it was already there. But all right. And there's actually nothing else to adjust here. So we're good. So now we're going to check it. Wait for it and we get check 1 passed. So if I had done this incorrectly, you would see check 1 failed. So that's how you'll know whether or not that worked, and then we'll move on. All right, check 1 passed. I'm actually going to, so the next thing is to hit next, and we're in part 1, step 3 here, or sorry, step 6, excuse me. If you're curious about where you are in the process, you can click this little hamburger here, and it'll tell you, okay, I've done these, I have hypothesis testing, and then I have completing. So it looks like hypothesis testing is really the last part where I'll be using any kind of statistics here. So, and you can see I'm getting towards the end of the script too. So again, I'm going to be asked to comment lines 94 through 100. So maybe this time just for, oops, excuse me, sorry about that. As an example, this time I'll just use the pounder hash symbol. I'll do those sections, and then 106 through 113. Again, you can use that multi-line comment that I used last time. That's fine as well. Just showing both ways of doing it. Then uncomment lines 119 through 125. Okay. All right, we're going to replace dataset name with Manchester weather again. And obviously your variable for a different scenario would be different, but this would be the same exact process. We're going to replace the variable name with EMXT. Looking at temperature. Okay, and now it says replace X value with appropriate value. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say this is the value for EMXT. So our situation here is that it's claimed that 67% of the months have highest monthly maximum temperatures above 19 degrees Celsius, which is EMXT greater than 190. So that's what I'm looking for here. Test this claim using a hypothesis test at 5% level of significance. In order to perform this function, you need to use the appropriate modifications to the script below, which is that process we were just following. All right, so the next section is that we need a null value. So the null value that we're testing here So we're saying, is there significant evidence to suggest the proportion is 67%? So that null value is 67%, or as a decimal, 0.67. And then we have a couple different test types. We could look at like a smaller, a larger, or not equal to. And in this case, we want to know, is there evidence to suggest that the proportion is 67%? Not greater, not less than, or that it is. So we're going to do not equal. And the way that's done here is not dash equal. So we're testing whether or not, whether there's sufficient evidence to suggest that the proportion is 67%. We're not testing whether it's smaller or larger, just that it is. All right. Moving on to the next section, population mean. So in this section, we're asked, it's claimed that the highest monthly maximum precipitation is 28 millimeters, EMXP equals 280. Test this claim using a hypothesis test at 1% level of significance, In order to perform this function, you need to make the appropriate modifications to the provided script. In other words, you should uncomment these lines, okay? Okay, that's done. Replace dataset name with Manchester weather, okay, I can do that. Again, if you choose to use find replace, that's fine as well. And then we're replacing variable name with EMXP. So I'll just use the find replace there. All right, and then next is we're going to test. It is claimed that the highest average monthly maximum precipitation is 28 millimeters. EMXP equals 280. So we're testing whether that null value is exactly, or is 280. Do we have evidence otherwise? So we're not looking for whether it's larger or smaller. We want to test whether it is equal to, right? Because that's this word here. We're not saying is it greater than 28 millimeters, less than 28 millimeters. We're saying the precipitation is 28 millimeters. So again, that alternative hypothesis not equal. All right, and then we can come down here and hit check it and see what we get. It's going to take a minute here. Check one passed. So if we had done something here, like we had used smaller, for instance, as our alternative hypothesis, this would fail. And there you see it fails. Just as if we changed this to, 500 and checked it, that should fail as well. So I want to make sure that all those checks have passed. Okay, so now all of our checks for all parts have passed. Next, last part is getting our results. So once you've confirmed the code is correct, we have to uncomment all these lines. So, and this is where that multi-line comment is going to be really helpful, because it's going to be a lot easier now to uncomment lines 17 through 52, because all I have to do is delete these tick marks at line 17 and down here at line 52. All right, and then 56 through 89, delete those. There's 89 here. And then now you'll see that this is going to be a little more, slightly more labor intensive here. 94 through 100, 106 through 113, and these should already be uncommented because we just did it and we didn't comment them out, but that's just to clarify that we want those to be uncommented. All right, the next part is how we're going to get our results. So the checkouts didn't tell us exactly what our results are, so we're going to follow this process. So we're going to open a new terminal window, which means we're going to go to Tools and Terminal, and it's okay if you're not familiar with the terminal. That's fine. If you've taken IT 255 or familiar with Linux, you might be. And you can actually drag this over here. I think it's a little bit easier to drag it over here, and I'll show you why in just a moment. So now we have it. So now you notice that we just have multiple tabs, just like you would in a web browser. So the terminal's open, and we're gonna insert the following command: Python milestone1.py. So we'll type for some reason It's not letting me type here. I'm going to close that terminal window and open a new one. Let's see if it works now. There we go. 1.py, hit enter. That'll take a moment. Once that executes, you'll have your results. And there they are. So you'll notice that it's quite a bit, so you're going to have to scroll to see it. Sorry about that. It's my internet connection. I'll do that again. Tools, terminal, again, Python, milestone1.py, hit enter. Those results will come, and then it'll exit. So all of your results, you can scroll up here, and you'll be able to see each step. And you can go from there, and then you can take those results. If you're really comfortable with run this on the command line, you could, instead of displaying these here, you could output them to a file. So if you're comfortable with that, that may be easier for you, but that's again completely up to you. So let's read through this. Now that you complete all the above steps for the final project, follow the directions in the rubric document to download and submit your final script to the correct item in Brightspace. There are additional requirements to this assignment regarding the summary report, so this isn't the entirety of that. So be sure that you follow the rubric very carefully and do the rest of what's required of you by this assignment. In order to get this file, we're going to go up here, we're going to go to View and File Tree, and we can actually see all the files here. And Milestone 1 is the file that we're working with here. And you can right-click here and download. And it'll ask you to authenticate, and then you can download. And I believe that I'm being asked to authenticate because my my session was ended. So I'm going to cancel that and let you do that on your own. But if you have questions about this, of course, contact your instructor. And best of luck to you on Milestone 1. Take care.